Welcome to this edition of the Click and Pledges Fundraising Command Center podcast, where we talk the why, the what, and the how in the Click and Pledges ecosystem. This is the Why series. Today we're doing a bit of an architectural analysis, looking at something we've titled Faulty Architecture. And I have to say, when I first saw that written down, my first thought was, hang on, is that a typo? Shouldn't it be Faulty, meaning broken? Because, well, we are definitely talking about broken processes here.
That's a great question, and you're right on the theme, but no, the spelling is actually very deliberate. It's Fawlty, a direct reference to Basil Fawlty from that brilliant British comedy, Fawlty Towers.
Oh, okay, the master of hotel mismanagement. I'm with you now.
Exactly, and we're keying in on one episode in particular, the builders. So Basil, in his infinite wisdom, decides to cut costs. He fires the professional architect, a guy named Mr. Stubbs, and instead he hires this famously incompetent builder, O'Reilly.
Right, the guy who promises the world for half the price.
And O'Reilly promises a quick, visible result, a shiny new door. But to get it done fast, he just ignores every single structural principle. He knocks out a load-bearing wall and then replaces a critical steel joist with this completely useless wooden lintel.
So he got a shiny object, the door, but in the process, he basically guaranteed the entire building would eventually collapse.
That is precisely the paradox we're diving into today. This is really a sequel to our last conversation on attention is all you need.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to use that Fawlty Towers mess to explain why so many nonprofits are adopting what we're calling the O'Reilly mindset.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It means treating technology like a series of shiny new doors, visible engagement tools, while completely destroying the invisible load-bearing data structures underneath. And, well, that leads directly to a structural collapse in generosity.
Okay, let's unpack that. The O'Reilly mindset. It sounds like it's all about confusing activity on the surface with real foundational stability. You see another organization with a new multi-step form or some fancy pop-up and think, oh, we need that to be advanced, but you're just punching holes in your own walls.
That's the trap. Basil Fawlty is a comedy, but for an organization, the consequences are very, very real. We have to move past just thinking about components and start applying some, real organizational theory. We found a lot of insight from the researchers Henderson and Clark. Back in 1990, they introduced this idea of architectural innovation, and it gives us the perfect language for this problem.
Right. They're the ones who broke knowledge down into those two crucial types. And they sound similar, but in reality, they're worlds apart.
They absolutely are. So first, you have component knowledge. This is the easy stuff. It's knowing how one specific, isolated part of the system works.
Like, I know how to design a pretty field on a form.
Exactly. Or, I know how to write the copy for this pop-up.
Yeah.
It's very localized knowledge.
But the danger comes when that's all you have, when you don't have the second, much more critical category.
Which is architectural knowledge. And this is the system-wide view. It's knowing how all those little components link together, how they interact. And crucially, it's knowing the downstream impact if you change just one little piece.
The classic example being, I know if I change this one field for the marketing team.
The finance team's reconciliation report completely breaks.
Yes. That single sentence is the whole problem in a nutshell.
The marketing team sees a piece of paint, a component. The finance team sees the steel joists, the architecture.
Precisely. And that's what we call the Henderson-Clark trap. The collapse happens because organizations are just blind to the architectural changes they're making. They see that new multi-step donation form with the fancy progress bar and all the extra questions, and they see it as a simple component change, a better door.
They think they're making an upgrade. Visually, maybe. But they fail to realize that by adding all that friction, they're actually destroying the architectural knowledge that lets a gift flow smoothly. They're focused on upgrading the paint, while O'Reilly is in the background taking out the pillars.
I get the theory, but here's a real challenge I see. For a lot of smaller nonprofits, they don't have a Mr. Stubbs. They don't have an expert architect on staff. They have passionate people who learn component knowledge from online tutorials. So are they just doomed to fall into this O'Reilly mindset because they don't have the resources?
That's a fantastic and very real question, and it's why the architecture of the platform you choose is so critical. An ideal platform, the kind we advocate for, should have the architectural knowledge built right in. It should be invisible. The system itself needs to be Mr. Stubbs. It should prevent you from knocking out a load-bearing wall, even if you don't realize that's what you're doing.
So the system acts as the guardrail. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's shift from the back-end architecture to the front-end donor experience. Where did they feel the pain from all this?
Oh, you can feel it immediately. We use what we call the Amazon coffee maker test. Just think about buying something expensive online, say a $500 espresso machine on Amazon. If you're logged in, what does it take?
Almost nothing. It knows me, it knows my address, my card. I click Buy Now. That's it. It's invisible. Zero friction.
Zero. The system is engineered to accelerate a high-value transaction. Now compare that to a typical nonprofit donation page. To give $25, a simple, impulsive act of generosity, you're suddenly faced with, what, maybe 14 different form fields?
Oh, at least. You have to select your title, Mr. Mrs. Dr. Ru, which is just bizarre. You have to create an account you'll never use again.
And then, the final insult, you have to prove you're not a robot by squinting at blurry pictures of traffic lights.
It's total whiplash. The desire to give just smacks right into a wall of bureaucracy.
And this is where we need to update our thinking. In this age of one-click everything, a click isn't engagement. A click is a cognitive tax. Every single time you force a user to make a choice, to type something redundant, you are costing them mental energy. You're draining their motivation.
That phrase, cognitive tax, is perfect. It really frames the cost. And that brings us back to what you call garden gnome design.
Right. It's this tendency to add decorative clutter that serves no real purpose. These are the unnecessary fields, the extra steps that just get in the way. They're garden gnomes you put in the hallway that only serve to trip people up on their way to do something important.
And it all comes from that O'Reilly mindset of focusing on the visible stuff, not realizing the floor is about to give way.
Exactly.
So let's connect this directly to the physics of generosity. Last time we talked about donor attention generating free energy. How does that play out here?
Okay, so when a donor reads a story, when they feel that connection and decide to act, they are building up this incredible emotional momentum. That's the free energy. By the time they click that donate button, they have metaphorically become Atlas. They have chosen to lift the weight of the world of your cause.
That's a powerful moment. They've already overcome the biggest hurdle, which is the decision to help.
Right. And the physics here is simple. That built-up energy has to be released into immediate, successful action.
Right.
Atlas is there, ready to go.
But then the typical nonprofit platform just, violates the laws of thermodynamics?
It does. It blocks Atlas with a clipboard. Just as he's ready to lift, a little bureaucrat pops up and says, "Excuse me, before you save the world, could you tell us where you heard about us? And also, prove you can see a bicycle."
And all that amazing free energy, that momentum,
Yeah.
where does it go?
It has to go somewhere. So it dissipates as heat, frustration, annoyance, and then abandonment. If you make Atlas stand there holding that massive weight while he fills out your paperwork, eventually Atlas shrugs. He doesn't drop the gift because he stopped caring. He drops it because the faulty architecture made the lift impossible. The friction just killed the momentum.
That is such a clear and, frankly, painful way to put it. And we even see that friction on the form itself, right? More garden gnomes.
Absolutely. One of the biggest mistakes we see is organizations trying to resell the donor at the checkout. The donation form is covered in huge hero images or long paragraphs about the mission.
But the person is already there, they're sold, they just need to complete the task.
Exactly. Putting a big image on your payment form is like wallpapering a fire exit. It just adds cognitive load at the exact moment the brain needs to perform a simple motor function. Get out of the way.
So the goal is an invisible door. It has to be silent, frictionless. But how do you balance that with the very real need for good data, for stewardship, without sending out that guy with the clipboard?
That is the ultimate test of architectural knowledge.
Oh.
It means we have to completely reject O'Reilly and go back to the principles of Mr. Stubbs, the professional. Great architecture lets your technology act as an invisible butler, or maybe even better, a gym spotter.
I like that, a gym spotter. Because when Atlas is listing that weight, the spotter isn't making conversation.
They're not asking for demographic data, no. They are there to stabilize the weight if the lister struggles, to ensure the lift is successful. They support, they don't hinder.
So what does that look like practically? How does the architecture do that spotting invisibly?
We talk about it as the architecture becoming a kind of time machine. It needs to automatically connect the past, the present, and the future for that donor without ever asking them a question.
Okay, break that down. The past.
The past is recognition. The system has to instantly know who the donor is. From a cookie, from a previous login, whatever. Is this a first-time donor? A monthly giver, and then it auto-populates everything. Name, address, payment info. It stabilizes the wheat before the donor even feels how heavy it is.
And
the present is context. The system has to know where they came from. Did they click a link in the spring appeal email? It should automatically tag the gift with the right campaign code, the right fund, The donor should never have to pick that from a drop-down menu. The architecture ensures data integrity on its own.
So the finance report doesn't break. O'Reilly is kept out of the building.
Precisely. And finally, the future. This means triggering the right stewardship plan instantly. A brand new donor gets a different welcome journey than someone who's given for 10 years. The platform has to know which path to set them on automatically the second the donation is complete.
It's a huge philosophical shift, really. We're moving from a tool that takes the transaction to one that accelerates the generosity.
That's the core of it.
Yeah.
We have to stop thinking about taking the money and start thinking about how we can best accept the generosity. It's about respecting the energy that Atlas brought to that moment. Our job is to clear the rubble, burn the clipboard, and let the donor feel the pure satisfaction of moving the world without any bureaucratic friction. That's what brings them back.
So, to recap, focusing on that invisible, load-bearing architectural integrity over the shiny, visible component changes is everything. It's the only way to harness that donor-free energy and, well, prevent Atlas from shrugging. The choice between O'Reilly and Mr. Stubbs is the choice between stability and eventual collapse.
And I think it leaves us all with a final question to ask about our own systems. As you look at your donation experience, you have to ask, is my architecture acting as a helpful gym spotter, making sure the lift succeeds? Or am I sending a bureaucrat with a clipboard to get in the way of a truly world-changing action? The answer to that really defines the entire future of your fundraising.
For more information about how powerful architecture can enable that invisible butler and gym spotter experience for your organization, make sure to visit clickandpledge.com and request for a one-on-one training or demo. Whether you are a client or just curious about our platform's architectural philosophy, just ask us and we will gladly get together with you to chat.
And don't forget to subscribe to this deep dive to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest features of the Click and Pledge Fundraising Command Center.